Hello, this is a guy who likes fanfiction and is too lazy to read, so here is the boy in the team in audio form. Check the description for the links to the author. Chapter 26, Ending Without Glory. The Suzanu's blade carved through the wooden walls like butter, tearing apart the floor and the ceiling equally. Standing within its purple chakra, Sasuke's eyes shone darkly. He couldn't hold it for long, but for what little he could, he'd use it. The chakra blade sliced once, and only once, through the building that kept him prisoner. Around him, he could hear the screams of others. The Susanoo disappeared shortly thereafter, leaving him to collapse on the floor, wheezing out what little air he could. The Mangekyo might have been powerful, but every power had a cost. Around him was now the open night sky. As the rubble had fallen blocking the path to him from those still in the house, he was actually able to see a small round square from his spot, which he could reach with ease. The crying and the screaming, however, caught his attention. It was then that he realized he hadn't been alone in his prison. There had been women and children, probably no further than a few cells away from him. A few dug their way out scared senseless, but all were unmistakably shaken and bloodied. Sasuke swallowed his guilt down. He didn't need that now. He needed to think, and be ready to fight. A child clutched the dust-covered limb of his mother, which emerged from the rubble lifelessly. He closed his eyes, but it was too late. The Sharingan would never make him forget that instant, that picture, that image. Forever, he would remember. Bile rose to his throat, for all of his stoicism, to remember clearly, as if it had happened the very minute before. It was a curse, not a gift. No amount of convincing from his father would tell him otherwise. He remembered. He remembered, and because of that, he shuddered and curled down in a ball on the ground. Naruko felt the earth tremble slightly, before wincing as Fu slammed her fists against the closed door once more. They hadn't been chained then again without chakra. What use was there but that helped little when they were without equipment. Open up! Fu screamed. I'm hungry. Open up! I want dinner. Open up! Shut up! A male voice growled back. The wooden panel slid to the side, as an angry face showed through. In that moment, Fu slammed her fist straight through the door's panel, knocking the guard unconscious. The girl then smiled as she pushed as much of her left limb out of there, nimbly reaching for the lock on the other side of the door. Damn, I can't reach his keys, she hissed. You could have planned it better, Naruko snarled. You weren't trying anything, bimbo. Only Yu-chan can call me bimbo, bug freak. Fu pulled herself away from the door, before dashing towards it and slamming her shoulder against it. Ah! Wincing, the Nanabe's Jinhiriki cradled her shoulder. That was pathetic, Naruko snorted. This is how you do it. The next moment, her shoulder slammed against the door. It rattled, but it did not open. Naruko growled, before kicking it sulkily. Damn door! Was that how you showed me? Fu asked sarcastically. I'm impressed. You. This is your entire fault. Naruko yelled. If you hadn't dropped Shin-chan, we wouldn't be in this problem. Mine? You could have just left me in peace with him. I just wanted someone to talk with, and he was kind enough to listen to me. You could have talked with him at any moment, but you didn't. Naruko flinched. That's not true. Shin-chan's really shy. Did you ever even talk with him? I know a lot of things about him. Fu crossed her arms over her chest, lifting her chin to the side with a smug smile on her face, because we talked. He's kind of shy and doesn't like much being the center of the attention, that's true, but once he opens up, he's really easy to talk to. I bet you don't even know when his birthday is. And how would you know? Naruko retorted hotly. I asked him, she shrugged. I asked him why he became a shinobi, and we ended up talking about his parents. Then we talked about cakes he can bake them too, you know, and from there he admitted to baking his own birthday cake. Then she smiled. Of course you know about it, right? Ah, right. Naruko sputtered. We're teammates, so it's obvious I know about that. Really? Oh? Then when is his birthday? It's in. Naruko coughed something that resembled a garglember. Wrong, Fu replied dryly. You knew nothing of him, yet you simply demanded him to be your friend. What friend were you then? A horrible one. Friends should be friends because they share things with one another, not because one is at the beck and call of the other. Nariko looked down, sniffling. He's dead, so what can I do about it now? There was a soft rattling of keys at the door. Then the lock gave way and Shinku Harano stepped inside, his body half covered in blood. Gaia ghost. Fu and Nariko both shrieked, grabbing a hold of one another. Shinku winced, before cracking a wry smile. Cavalries, here, he held up a bitter smile. Behind him, the shinobi Fu had downed now sported a thin slit at the neck, from which blood spilled out copiously on the ground. You're alive, Shin-chan? Nariko asked. Yeah, he chuckled lightly. I am, he shook his head. We should leave. We need to find Yuki-chan first. Nariko exclaimed, before warily stepping closer to him. A bit stiffly, Nariko hugged him tightly. I'm glad you're alive, Shin-chan. Shinku stiffened in return, before exhaling a long breath of relief. I'm glad too. Fu fidgeted with her fingers, before walking closer. I'm sorry I dropped you. Ah, well. His smile grew strained, it's fine, I suppose. He looked around. We need to leave this place though, he snapped curtly. It's just a matter of time before they find the bodies. Bodies? Nariko asked, blinking. What bodies? Ah, well. Shinku hesitantly began, before his face morphed into a grimace. The ones I killed to get till here of course. There wasn't much of a choice. Kill or be killed. We should leave. Mobility is what makes a shinobi such. Let's move. We can talk while moving out of here. Then Shinku sped up, starting to walk down the hallway with a startled Nariko and Fu hurrying behind him. Shin-chan, are you alright? Nariko asked. Yes, he meekly muttered. I'm fine, really, nearly drowning because I was the center of a child's scuffle does wonders to my mood however, he added in a near growl. But, it's fine, once more, his voice turned low. It's not like holding a grudge will do me any good, right? He stopped before another round of stairs, which seemed to descend. Fu, aren't you from Taki? Do you know the way down from here? Ah, Fu blinked. I can carry you down with my wings, she added. Flying in midair is risky, they could see us, Shinku retorted. Nariko blinked. Something was definitively going on with Shin-chan. His eyes seemed to trail off in the distance every now and then, and the way he spoke went up and down, as if he was under a caffeine rush. Can you use the nanobi? He asked then suddenly, it would be easy to finish them up then. Fu's eyes widened in disbelief, you know about it. They talked about selling you to someone, he retorted, up in the lounge. I stuck around long enough to hear Nariko's bounty is on the 200 million Ryos alive, for a Waigakur. Nariko whistled. Damn. You think if I give them an arm they'll pay me something? We need to leave the village, Shinku retorted hotly. We needed a Kigaku or shinobi to do so, he added. I was planning on getting a villager but, Fu-san? Can you guide us out? Fu nodded quickly. I know how to leave, but, she looked around. Taki's my home, so I don't want to leave it. She suddenly clapped her hands. I'll just guide you all out and then come back to kill them all, she smiled brightly as she said that. It works, right? Nariko's eyes widened in disbelief, what? Yes, it's fine, Shinku retorted, gripping on the kunao in his right hand tightly. Right, equipment. A bunch of kunao and shuriken found their way together with bundles of steel wire in Nariko's and Fu's extended hands. Nariko's mind finally caught on to what was strange. Shin-chan. Where did you find a jounin flak jacket? They hid the corpses of the Takigaku or shinobi they killed down in the caves, Shinku muttered. When I was dropped. He brought a hand to his mouth, breathing in deeply. Well, they were there. The bodies. Can we talk about something else, please? Yes, a male voice said from the end of the hallway. How about we talk of how you're all going back in the cell? Suien. Fu snarled, showing her teeth to the jounin with the Takigaku symbol on his forehead. You aren't going to win this. Oh, but now I have something more. With that said, he gripped tightly on a plastic bottle, while holding Shivuki with his other hand. I have the hero water now. Yujin Hiraki don't scare me at all. Two Omegakuer shinobi appeared then next to him. Kiri-same, Mura-same. As he said that, the bottle of water passed hands as each of the shinobi took a sip. Take the Jinhyuriki down, I'll deal personally with the boy, he smiled then wickedly, as chakra flared visible to the naked eye from the body of all three shinobi. Shinku swallowed. He wasn't referring to him, right? He wasn't the leader of the team. Clearly, that was Sasuke or Naruto. He didn't need special treatment. Suien was fast. The Sword of Water, a highly secret technique of Takigakuer's elite shinobi, slammed into Shinku's stomach and sent him reeling backwards a few feet. His back crashed against the wooden wall, before his body rolled down the stairs and fell limply on the floor below. Retching blood, pain was all Shinku could see that and stars, many stars. A strong kick sent him flying in the air, before the sword made of condensed water and chakra sliced down on his sides. The Jounin's flak jacket actually saved his life in that moment, deadening the otherwise fatal blow and sending him to slam on the ground. Shinku gagged, before puking out blood and gasping for air once more. Everything around him seemed to spin, as he barely managed to lift himself of an inch from the ground, before falling back down. Kids like you shouldn't be heroes, Suien snarled. What did you think you could do, You thought you could win? You thought you could be a hero? The man kicked Shinku by the ribs, turning the boy chest up. You're worthless, brat. The Jinhyuriki will be short work now that we have the Raise-non. From above, the ground itself trembled as a male voice came through, before the ceiling gave way as a spiky blonde-haired man with bright cerulean eyes came down with murder in his eyes. Suien paled. It lasted only a second. The Yondaime Hokage tore through the visible chakra of the Takigakuer shinobi with an ease that looked beyond human, the sphere of bright blue chakra visibly shining even through the darkening vision of Shinku. It was over. He could let go. Kid. The Yondaime said, grabbing onto him. Don't fall asleep. Stick with me. You hear my voice? Stick with my voice. Everything is going to be fine now. I brought reinforcements. You have to stay awake until we get a medic in here. Stay awake, got it? Shin-chan. Naruko's blurred form appeared close by then. Shin-chan. She didn't even look worse for wear. He was the only one wounded, probably, again. Wasn't he simply pathetic? Cracked ribs as a minimum, broken spine, hope not, I'd like to walk, hospital, I'm sure, damn if I'm tired. Is that a toad? Where? Blurred green thing. Why are we discussing what a blurred green thing is now? If we're going to die, let's die with a smile on our lips. That's stupid. Well, now you know what it's like, dealing with you. He opened his eyes to the smell of a hospital room. Shinku felt numb, his entire body covered in bandages and casts. His gaze settled on both sides of the bed. They were empty. Nobody cares. He would have liked it, if there had been any sign at all of the passage of someone in the room. There were no flowers. Nobody had sent him cookies or postcards. He was strapped to the bed, without anyone else in end. He tried to move, before hissing in pain and stilling once more. No, moving was out of the question. We're alone. Ah. He exhaled. He coughed slightly. Water. The door slid open then, as a blonde-haired man stepped inside. He had a clipboard and a pen in his hands, but he wasn't dressed like a medic. If anything, he looked more like one of those guys from the torture and interrogation department. Wait, he looked very similar to Ino's father. Now that he thought about it, the man had come for a show and tell if he remembered. Harano-san. The man sat down near him. My name is Yamanaka Inoichi, do you know where you are? Kei Konoha. Very well, the man nodded. It was judged better to place you in the isolation ward of the hospital until a time where you could be cleared for visits. He was in the isolation ward? Why? He frowned for a moment, before wincing. See, can I have some water, please? No liquids are allowed. The man made a sympathetic smile. Nothing is actually allowed in here without supervision. This is the hospital ward for shinobi who might pose a risk for the well-being of other patients, and water techniques exist after all. There was a moment of silence. You'll be out from here soon, just the time to answer my questions, Harano-san. Why yes, Shinku murmured. Well, Inoichi said, you killed for the first time during the mission, right? Yes, he blearily said with a cracked voice. Kill or be killed. How did that make you feel? Satisfied. It proved we were strong, we were capable, we were survivors. You, ugly, it was, I felt sick, he could feel the bile rise from his throat. I still don't. I understand, Inoichi nodded. Let us talk about something else then. He scribbled something down on his clipboard. I heard from your teammates you separated because of an accident. What happened? I was weak. They pulled us in the midst of their games. We lost. We fell. We should have been stronger. There was a discussion, he mumbled. We, me and Fu, were flying but I flailed a bit and so, I fell. I see, Inoichi nodded. He scribbled something else down on his clipboard. Really, what was he writing there? Would you mind if I entered your memories? Inoichi said then. I could clear you much faster if I could see what happened with my eyes. Shinku swallowed. No. 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 No, he croaked out. It is not pleasant, I admit, Inoichi stated, but whatever I see will be held under the confidentiality secret between patient and doctor. Patient. Every shinobi undergoes psychological evaluation after their first kill and thereafter on a yearly basis. Normally it is done by a member of the Yamanaka clan, but the Hokage requested I took care of Team 7 personally. He hazarded a smile. There is really nothing to fear. No, Shinku muttered. No. All right, Inoichi nodded. I know it might be overwhelming, but don't close yourself off. If you ever need someone to speak to, remember that my door is always open. Isn't that the usual cliché line of all doctors? You still have to take an appointment though. Yes. Would you be willing to have a visitor? Inoichi asked then, his voice gentle. I heard from the staff she stubbornly refused to leave the hospital's lounge until you could receive visits. How long was I? 1 day and a half, Inoichi replied. No wonder you're thirsty, just take it easy for the moment, Harano-san. You did well. You did very well. But I lost. You freed your teammate however, and she managed to use a summoned toad to warn the Yondaime in time after that. You placed your life at risk to save her, without any backup available. Who am I, the Tooth Fairy? It speaks highly of your courage. Courage in death is foolish. Thanks. Inoichi nodded, before raising an eyebrow. About the visitor. Oh, yes, it's fine. Inoichi stood up then, and walked out briskly. A few moments later and the hospital door slid open to allow Fu to enter. Somehow, while he hadn't expected his parents it was work time, after all he still had hoped for his mother. Hey! Fu exclaimed, before sitting down close to his bed. How are you feeling? Like I was hit by a jounin, he muttered back. I know the feeling, Fu nodded. You should have seen how angry Nchan was when you were flung against the wall and then down the stairs. She nearly ripped into the two of them alone, but I was there to give a hand of course. She then summoned this small toad and snapped at the little guy, who puffed in smoke. Before the two shinobi from AIM could react, bam! There was the Yondaime. He's like a myth, you know? And he was there and he went all raise non. Swoosh. She actually mimicked the battle scenes. And then he literally broke the floor and took care of Suien in a second. He was so cool. We enjoyed being the punching bag, of course. Not that you weren't cool too. Fu hastily added, you came to save us. My hero. She actually fluttered her eyes, before smiling brightly. Oh, right. I'm in Konoha now for a while. When you get better, can you show me around? I don't know how long they'll keep me here, he remarked. Maybe you could ask. He blinked then. Was Uzumaki-san proper after all? He had avoided up to that moment to use the name of his teammates, because he didn't know how to call them. He knew he should have asked first things first, but he simply hadn't. Naruko-san, he said then. If she can. Fu pouted for a moment, looking visibly unhappy, before blinking. Oh, they didn't tell you. What? Your other teammate, Yuke-san. Shinka refrained from pointing out how no, Sasuke wasn't really called Yuke as a given name, is in isolation too. I don't know why, she hastily added. Was he attacked? He hadn't thought about it, but hadn't there been a woman too? If there had been a woman, then, she had gone down, right? Maybe the Omegaku or Kunoichi had attacked Sasuke and... I don't know, Fu mumbled. But you know what? I met with the Abarame and they were kind enough to offer me a place to crash while I'm in Konoha, she smiled. They've got insects too. And some are flesh-eating just like mine. And did you know that there are rare breeds that... His skin began to itch at the 50th type of insect. Nevertheless, he no longer felt sad about being alone, because he wasn't. He had a friend nearby, and that was all that he needed. Chapter 27, Normality Returns. The medics moved him out of isolation by the end of the day. It was then that Naruko showed up, sitting down on the chair near his bedside and fidgeting with her fingers. There was a small scar marring her right cheek now. It looked like a fourth whisker, if not for the fact it stood diagonally across them. You know, she said abruptly, I've known Sasuke for like, years. He was my first friend, my best friend. He's like a brother now, like the best friend brother. She thoughtfully hummed. I'm not good at beating around the bush, she awkwardly stated then. I'm good, I'm the first kunoichi of the year, but that's because my mom kept hitting me with a ladle if I didn't do my homework, and with the Kage Bunshin, cramming 2 hours suddenly became 200, she blabbered on. What I'm trying to say is that I've known Sasuke for years. I call him Yuke-chan, and he doesn't even get angry about it. Shinka remained quiet. He hoped she would make a point of sorts before the end of the visiting hours. If Sasuke had been in your place, I wouldn't have stopped looking for his body, she swallowed heavily. I would have probably looked for him high and low and I didn't do that for you. I accepted your death without even really trying to see if you were alive. Arg, she ruffled her own head. I'm sorry. I should have trusted in your skills, I should have believed in you, she looked down, clasping her hands together. Sasuke's still in isolation for the moment. My mother all but pulled me out of the hospital yesterday. She has this fixation that family should eat together at dinner, so. She awkwardly smiled. I don't have any excuses, she sighed in the end. I'm a horrible teammate. I don't know anything about you and we never talk between us. I'm always blabbering with Sasuke, filling the silence with snappish remarks because I'm. She exhaled loudly. I'm afraid. I trusted many people when I was young. I made friends with everyone, since everyone always smiled at me or was kind. I was the stupid kid, the one you can give candy to and he'll follow you in the back alley of some seedy corner without question. When my friends had me pay for the afternoon snacks, I just thought that eventually they'd pay their share too. When we went out and some boy walked by that was the crush of a girl in the group, I'd be the brave one to invite him to play with us. She gripped at the sides of her jacket. I know these aren't proper excuses. There's nothing I can say or do that will change the fact that I didn't believe in you, and you still came back for me. Fu, Dad actually told me you did quite the thing. Sasuke tore down his prison, but he was already chakra exhausted by the time my dad came for him, while you just went through and got us out. In the end I might know how to use the Kyuubi's chakra and Sasuke might have his Sharingan, but... She breathed in, and then she exhaled. Out of us three, you're the better teammate. Her hands then went to grip her knees. You can't be friends with someone if all they do is just obeying whatever you tell them to do. You can't be. She bit on her lips. I want to be your friend. I want us to be friends, teammates, snappish remark partners. Yuke-chan's fine with making the duo a trio, he's the one who always pulls my head out of the gutter, and he'd be glad to have help. My head goes in the gutter a lot of times, you know. Naruko tried a hesitant smile. I understand if you don't want to talk to me again, she croaked out, her voice trembling. I didn't even look for you more than once. I just assumed you had died. I didn't believe I'm practically at fault for what happened. I'd understand you being angry. Shinku closed his eyes, before exhaling. I'm angrier at our sensei. Naruko waited quietly for something more. Shinku blearily opened his eyes again, before sighing. I don't hate you. I'm not happy. If there hadn't been an exit, I might have died of hunger after months rather than find a way out, but I'm alive, so I can forgive. Then his eyes narrowed, but the next time, unless there's my body right in front of your eyes, I demand a search party. Naruko smiled brightly. Hi. Then she blinked and giggled. You know Fuchan's been assigned to our team for a while? We're responsible for her while she's in Konoha, she snickered. Guess what convinced her to come to our village? He hazarded. Really? Naruko blinked. You aren't even trying, are you? Bandaged man on the hospital bed, I would kill for a glass of water and something solid beneath my teeth, but I have yet to see the dinner trolley stroll by and. Naruko smirked, before gripping a scroll from inside her jacket and pulling it out. Let me present you, Shinchan, the solution to our problems. She unrolled the scroll and then poured chakra into it. The next instant, 2 bowls of steaming ramen emerged. Storage seals contain everything they seal within them at the same state of energy they were at the moment of the sealing, Naruko said suddenly, handing over one of the ramen bowls to him while she held the other. A hot plate will remain hot infinity veli inside a scroll until the time where it is unsealed. There will be no external reaction to that, of course, so you can carry a small piece of paper and in truth end up with a large magma moat. Isn't that awesome? What would you use a magma moat for? He asked quietly, carefully sipping the broth. The warm soup went straight down his throat like some sort of nectar from the heavens. He was that hungry, apparently. Dunno, Naruko shrugged. Maybe make a magma-proof castle. Isn't it called lava when it comes out from the volcano? Shinku hazarded. Maybe. Shinku ate quietly, munching slowly as he savored the taste. He had no doubt the hospital food would taste horrible. Visiting hours are over. A nurse strolled in after a few minutes when the ramen's afterglow effect had them both calmly exhaling in peace and relief for filled stomachs. Only one relative allowed from this moment on. All right then, Naruko exclaimed. I'm off, Shinchan. Sleep and get better soon. Then he was alone once more. He dropped the back of his head against the pillow, his gaze going up to the ceiling as he slowly began to hum. Shinku was alone in the hospital room they had given him, either because there weren't that many shinobi who remained for a night, or because someone had pulled some strings to leave him in peace. Anyway, he hummed a nice little lullaby to himself. We're not missing dinner, are we? He whispered to the room. He received no reply. Shinku exhaled in relief. It had probably just been the stress of everything. Now that he was calmer, there really wasn't a need to scare himself over an imaginary voice in his head that no longer was there to begin with. Good, I'm not missing dinner, he acquiesced. No reply came forth, and so he chuckled. Dinner was nutritious. Cardboard-like boiled chicken and boiled peas with an undefined puree of something yellow. He would never claim the puree done with potatoes even if they menaced to kill him, because potatoes simply could not taste like shredded paper. The dinner trolley passed again to collect the empty plates, the nurse kindly smiling at him before closing the lights and giving him the good night. It was nice. He was in a hospital bed, but still, it felt nice. Then he closed his eyes. Blood splattered over his face, spraying around him like a thick viscous jelly that increased. He was falling the next moment, screaming loudly as he flailed and hit the water, where his mouth filled with blood and tears. His stomach hurled as he gripped on floating corpses to stay afloat, only for the giant snake with the rotting carcass in its mouth to slither by him, making him drop the hold on the corpse. He swallowed the crimson water to the point where he began to drown, disappearing beneath the surface as his breath came less. He flailed, the deep darkness clouding him everywhere as blood pooled into his lungs, torturing him with an agony he knew too well. He screamed louder, and then he awoke with a startled gasp in the room. A hand to his chest, he heard his beating heart drum loudly. He was alone in the dark room. The window closed, the door of the corridor only slightly ajar. He was alone. "Please, someone," he whispered with a cracked voice. It had been years since his last nightmare. "Anyone?" he pleaded. "What?" he cracked out. "You expect someone to come out and talk to you, like everything's fine? You want to be cooed back to sleep?" He sniffled. It was a nightmare. You get used to them and you return to sleep. It's not the end of the world, they aren't real and you'd better remember it. "Please don't go," he pleaded, even though he knew it was impossible for the voice to leave. It came from his own mouth after all. "I'm not leaving," he retorted. "Come on, we've been on this already. Talking helps deal with the stress. We are talking to ourselves to deal with the stress. Where did we hear that?" "Somewhere, it's not important anyway," he shrugged. "Now calm down, wipe away the sweat from your brows and forehead, and then gently go back to sleep. I'm not singing you a lullaby." Shinka gripped at his bed sheets. "Do you know where my stuff is?" he whispered. "I think the doctors will know. Probably you'll be visited tomorrow and you'll be able to ask about your belongings. I want to go home." He sniffled. "I want my bed. I want you to sleep," he growled. "Fine, fine," he exhaled. "You want us to open the window, take in the chilly air of the night while clad in a hospital gown made to let us parade our ass to the world, and then head back home, right? The keys? Do we have the keys?" Shinka swallowed. "We don't have the keys, do we? Which is why we sleep here tonight. But Mom and Dad, do you really want to tell them that you're out of the hospital because you were scared of your own shadow? Nightmares are nothing to worry about. They can't hurt you, people can, and there aren't enemies around here. So sleep, for the love of Kami, I'll sing you a song if only you'll sleep." "Thanks," Shinka whispered, closing his eyes. "For what?" "Being here. I'm supposed to be here. Still, thanks." Inner Shinka took form then in Shinka's mind as the boy went back to sleep, as a black and white interline of Shinka's actual form. With the word inner written on his head, he crossed his arms over his chest and exhaled from within the mind of the boy. "Next stop, Madman Land," he grumbled. Shinka peacefully hummed his agreement. Still, he slept without worries after that, knowing there was someone there. The next morning a hurried set of footsteps followed by a loud string of curses woke him up. The sun shone through the open window, as next to his bed stood a small chocolate tablet. He frowned at the sight of the chocolate. It was the same mark as the melted piece in the pocket of his jacket, if he still had the jacket. The door of his room opened then, to allow a painstakingly breathing Nariko inside. "Shin-chan, ANF, run." Shinka frowned. "What is there to?" "Nariko." A loud female voice bellowed soon after, as a red-haired woman with lineaments extremely similar to Nariko entered the room next, grabbing the girl by the neck. "Really, I can't believe it, Tabane. I'm not a monster." The woman then dropped Nariko on the floor, puffing her chest out and smiling smugly. "I'm the awesome red-hot habanero, Kushina Namikaze. Jounin of Konoha and mother to the most beautiful baby in the world." She began to coo after that, pinching Nariko's cheek. "Gah! Let me go." Nariko whined, flailing her arms without effect to stave off the pinching cheeks. "You're Harano-kun, right?" Kushina said, her smile still etched on her face. She was tightly holding Nariko in a headlock with her right arm though, which actually made the scene sort of creepy. Hi. "I wanted to thank you for getting this little rascal back home," the woman said softly, a smile on her face. She looked around then, before querying. "Aren't your parents here?" No," he blushed lightly, embarrassedly looking sideways. "Maybe they'll come by later." She frowned. "You've been in the hospital for 2 days now, Tabane." "Maybe they were just swarmed with work," he hazarded. "There are a lot of festivals coming up during this time so they probably didn't even go back home. Still, the hospital should have contacted them." He smiled awkwardly. "I'm sure they have their reasons." Kushina actually refrained from saying something else that was on her mind, instead putting up her most bubbly personality. "Well then. She smiled, and then she bowed deeply, pulling down in a bow Nariko in tow. Thank you, for saving my daughter. We're in your debt. Shinku blushed scarlet. He wasn't used to this. Ah, there's no need, I mean. Nonsense, Kushina ended the bowing gesture with a light smile. Praise is given where praise is due, Haranokan. Muum, Nariko whined, my head. Ops, Kushina giggled before letting go of her daughter's head that she had pushed down for the bow. If you need anything Haranokan, just let me know, Tabane. Then she smiled a bit more, I'll go and look for Mikoto-chan, so you can wait here with your teammate. Bye. With that, she literally made small jumps out of the room. Sorry, Nariko said, scratching the back of her head. She's always like that. It's all right, he replied. Nariko fidgeted for a moment. Oh, right, you know about Kakashi nii. What about him? He's still our sensei because Dad said there was no choice in the matter, but he can't take us on missions outside of the village anymore without another jounin. And we'll get an observer to value his teaching method. An observer? Yep. I don't know who though. Nariko's eyes then caught the chocolate bar on the bed desk. Oh, chocolate. Who brought it here? I don't know, Shinku muttered back, it was there when I woke up this morning. Must have been a nurse then, Nariko shrugged, moving closer. Her eyes were actually sparkling. Right, the doctors said because my mother totally wouldn't let them go until they told her, even if they shouldn't have told her but your parents, that you'll be free to go by this afternoon. Isn't it great what Chakra can do? I suppose, he exhaled. He still felt tired, for some reason. When Suzuki leaves the hospital, he hazarded, do you want to eat something together? Dadabiya. That's a promise. Oh right, I heard you can bake cakes, right? Shinku blushed. Yes. Oh, your parents taught you. He nodded, looking up to the ceiling. I wanted to impress a girl, it didn't work. Oh, Nariko chuckled with a lecherous gaze, and who was the lucky gal? Promise not to laugh. Can't do that, but I'm pretty sure it must have been cute, seeing a little kid baking a cake and covered in flour from head to toes. Shinku gave her a bleak look. I might be the dead last of the academy, but I know how to bake, thank you very much. There was no wasting flour. Yeah, don't change the argument, who was the girl? Ami. Ahaha. You had a... Tears appeared in Nariko's eyes, you had a crush on Ami? Really? That girl is a Suzuki fan powered up to 1000. You'd have better luck with Ino of all people. What did she say? I never gave her the cake, he sighed. Dumped it in the garbage on the way to school. I never told my parents why I wanted to bake it, but... OHI, you shouldn't waste food like that, Nariko retorted. Next time you end up having a crush and baking a cake, hand it over if you chicken out. Will do. When's your birthday? Nariko asked unexpectedly then. You told Fu-chan, she added, as if it held some sort of importance. It's in March, he replied. The 28th, he sighed. Well, mine's the 10th of October, Nariko exclaimed. I'm sure you know that. The festival's awesome. There's the festival of the Kyuubi's defeat on that day, Shinku pointed out. I usually help out my parents at the oven, so I don't know about the festival. There are stalls and games and lots of things to eat. And you get to wear pretty kimono and walk around, and then there are the fireworks at the end. The door of his room opened once more, and Fu slid inside. She gave a cheerful hand wave towards Nariko, and then settled down on the chair on the opposite side of him. Her forehead sported a Konohagaku or forehead protector, and she had applied a conspicuous dose of wax on it to make it sparkle. Guess who got her forehead protector? She said coyly, gingerly touching it. Fu-chan, that's awesome Tabia. Nariko exclaimed. Shinku blinked. Wait. Had they become friends? When? How? Hee, Fu giggled, before turning to look at Shinku and wait. There was a heartbeat of silence. It's a very nice forehead protector, he hazarded. Nariko face planted against the floor, while Fu just smiled brightly, thanks. Did the medic say when you're getting out, Shinkan? You've got to show me around Konoha. This afternoon, he replied. But if you want a grand tour of Konoha you should ask Naruko about it. OHI, Naruko exclaimed, grumbling for a moment. Naruko doesn't ring good. I'm Na-chan, got it? The brightest, cheer-filled, and beloved Kunoichi, Na-chan. You're Shin-kun, so I'm Na-chan. It helps that Yuki-chan is Yuki so we can be Shinukina together. Shinukina. Shinku blinked. I doubt that has a meaning. It certainly does. It means a true Yuki like that. So, we're a team of true Yuki. Shinku wearily shook his head. Hey, there's me too, Fu pouted. How about Fushinukina? A building like that Yuki. Naruko shook her head strongly, placing her arms in a cross in front of her. Nope. Not a chance. Fu whined. Shinku proposed another name. Naruko chuckled and shook her head. Then, finally, Sasuke walked in sourly. Yuki-chan. Naruko all but shot her entire body out of her chair to slam into Sasuke's, hugging him tightly and then proceeding to ruffle his hair. My favorite duck butt is alive. Dope. He snarled, pushing her away. I heard your ramblings all the way from the hallway. Were we that loud? Shinku asked wearily. I hope the doctors aren't angry at us. They wouldn't be even if she, Sasuke pointed at Naruko, suddenly started to sing or play the guitar. OHI, you trying to get something started, Yuki-chan? Naruko shot back. She looked at him apprehensively. You're all right now, right? She asked softly. Yes, I'm fine, Sasuke sighed. I just have to accept what I did. It's complicated. You know, people eventually forget stuff until they have to remember it, but with the Sharingan it's different. The normal Sharingan is one thing, but the main Jakkyuha, I remember everything clearly. It's like it happened but a mere minute ago. With time, it will become slowly an hour, then a day, then a week, but it's frightening. No wonder Itachi Nii was a pacifist, he shuddered. Shinku swallowed. I remember their screams and their cries, I just don't have to think about it and hopefully it will go away. Taking one deep breath, Sasuke smiled. I heard the Yondaime came to save our asses in the end. Is our Jounin getting the axe finally? Kakashi Nii was following orders, Naruko stated awkwardly. He received a message sent to all Jounin to come back to Konoha to deal with the upcoming situation of the Chunin exams. He planned for us to come back later at our leisure to toughen us up. He didn't think there was an enemy group of missing nin inside the village. Right, Sasuke's eyes turned to Shinku. I have to ask, the entrance was on the ground, and I'm pretty sure it was guarded. How did you get in? I climbed the tree, Shinku replied. You climbed the tree? Fu blinked. Really? Yeah. He nodded. I hoped there was an opening in the branches, and that's how I got in. Climbing to Kigakure's inner tree is one of the ways of becoming Genin Itachi, Fu said then. That means you can apply to become Itachi Genin if you want to. Hey. No trying to recruit Shin-chan. Naruko exclaimed while Sasuke sat down on the nearby bed. He's a Konoha shinobi. I can't believe they only gave a slap to the wrist to Kakashi, Sasuke growled. He left us alone. He's supposed to be in charge of protecting us. Kakashi Nii is the son of the White Fang, Naruko replied. It's a bit of a hush-hush because he's really strong as a shinobi, so he can't just be laid back from the force. He's also sorry, I'm sure of it. He just has his own way of showing it. If you say so, Sasuke grumbled. Still, can't we get another Jounin? He's also the only one with knowledge of seals and Sharingan that could help us, Naruko grimaced. At least, that's what my father told me. Sharingan? How could he help me? I've got the... And then Sasuke blanched. The main Jakkyuha. He has the main Jakkyuha, he has it. My dad didn't say that, Naruko shot back, but it's possible. So that's why he's unhinged, Sasuke snarled. Really? The light of the sun shone through the open window, as the four genin talked to one another for a couple of minutes more. Kakashi flipped the page of his Ika-Ika, before boringly gazing at his observer. What are you doing? Yojao stared back at him. Preparing, she flipped another page of her own book, Team Rearing and Child Rearing, a guide to newly minted Jounin Sensei. Why? Because I'm going to stick to Umbu for much longer, she retorted. I wouldn't have volunteered otherwise. You're mad, Kakashi grumbled. Jounin Sensei is a lot of work, Umbu is easier. I will see your method of teaching then, Yojao retorted. Shouldn't you go down there and make your excuses? Why? Kakashi asked. I already did. To the Hokage, yes, you haven't done them to your team, and here it says that a Jounin Sensei should know when he is wrong and admit it, in order to show the proper way to his students. I'll do that tomorrow, Kakashi shrugged. We'll be doing a D rank, after all. Kakashi shuddered. A D rank with Guy, the silver-haired man trembled. Why? Why of all the things? You reap what you sow, hey take-san. To those words, Kakashi did not reply. Chapter 28, The True Punishment is Humiliation. The hospital discharged him at 3 in the afternoon. The moment he stepped outside, wearing the same clothes he had gone inside the hospital with, albeit cleaned of the blood and mended where the cloth had torn, he was already trying to get back inside. So, Shin-chan, Naruko said, albeit holding up a casual tone of voice as she spoke. I was wondering, she looked towards Sasuke, who nodded back. How about we head over to your place? But I promised I'd take Fu-san on a tour of Konoha, he replied. Fu nodded eagerly. Well, that's all right then, you aren't already trying to skive off your promise of cake, right? He made a strained smile. That will take time, I can always bring one after. Nua. Naruko pouted, shaking her head firmly. I want a freshly baked cake now. Like, you have to take responsibility. Sasuke slammed a fist on the back of Naruko's head. You were just dying to use that reference, weren't you, Dobe? Teehee, she stuck her tongue out, I never managed with Yuki-chan before. Oh, I want a cake too. Fu remarked, clapping her hands happily. Shin-kun bakes? I want to try Shin-kun's cake too then. She fidgeted slightly, pulling one leg behind the other and holding her hands on the back, stretching to put her chest forward while placing her face sideways and glancing shyly to the side. I never had cake before, pretty please. She fluttered her eyes then. Shinku stared, speechless. OHI, Naruko frowned, that's going too far, she waved her fist at Fu. He's going to realize that you're acting if you do something like that. Acting? He asked then, only to frown as Sasuke gripped him by the shoulders and started to push him along the street. Nothing at all. Why don't we go to your house and start baking? We don't want to be late, right? Late for what? The oven's timer, I'm sure it's already running. But it can't. Shinku stopped trying to reason with the clearly mad people he had the disgrace of having as friends, and began to move forward of his own accord. He opened the door of his house and let them in. Heck, even Hibachi hadn't been inside his house, and they had been desk mates. He awkwardly shifted towards the kitchen, hastily removing the scribbled notes. As always, the story they spoke of was clear as the day. Remember to warn when you go out on a mission. I left you some food in the fridge. He crumbled the note and dropped it in the bin, before opening the cupboards one after the other. Flour, eggs and everything else he needed came out and laid neatly on the table by the time he realized only Sasuke had stayed in the kitchen. I'll oversee things here, he remarked dryly. Also known as the I will keep Naruko out of the kitchen at the cost of my life pledge. He tapped his chest then, a knowing nod on his face. Ah, well, shrugging, Shinku began to crack the eggs in the flour. It will be ready in a few hours, you know? I mean, you don't have to keep Naruko out, I doubt she'd be able to do much damage. Sasuke shrugged, as if the thing didn't bother him in the slightest. I've been thinking, Sasuke said dryly, that there was something wrong for a while, he acquiesced. I didn't know what it was, but there had to be something. Shinku blinked. I don't understand. You see, I think you're just hurting yourself. What? I told you that if you had any problems, you could talk it over with us. What are you talking about? Shinku asked warily. What is it this time? He added, with a light smile on his lips. Is this like that time with the food problem? Because I'm pretty sure there isn't anything wrong with me now. If that's true, then why didn't you subject yourself to the Yamanaka mind search? Shinku stuttered. You know that? Where's the patient-doctor confidentiality? You know, Nariko may look stupid but, out of us two, she's got the keener eyes for certain things, Suzuki continued. And when we add in everything else. The Uchiha took a deep breath. Are your parents abusing you? Shinku nearly slammed his head against the table. What? He stared, wide-eyed, at his teammate. Are you out of your mind? He added. No. He vehemently shook his head. What the hell is wrong with you? I mean, come on. I'm not a problem child. I don't have any problems. What the hell, really? Suzuki awkwardly looked sideways. Where did the other two go? Shinku asked, narrowing his eyes. Suzuki, you better tell me or I swear I will do something you won't like. They went to look for proofs, Suzuki said, holding his hands up. I know it might seem like defending them is the right thing to do, they're your parents, after all, but abuse is not right. It never is. You should not. Shinku snorted, before chuckling. Really? That was what they believed? Fine, Shinku sighed. I'll return to baking the cake. If you don't eat it though, I'll make sure the next one has a special something known as laxative. He continued to work in quiet silence. So, talking with the Yamanaka was a no way then, if Suzuki could know about what they said between them, then. You can trust me. I know. Humming to himself, Shinku whistled as he cleaned the table. It hadn't even taken him much time, and once the oven was warm enough, which was soon, he'd plop the cake in the oven and everything would be fine. Really, had he added the sugar to begin with? Yes, we did. Good. The kitchen clean, he went towards the fridge. Want something to drink? I think there's juice in the fridge. Water, Suzuki remarked in a soft murmur. And, well, I'm sorry about this, but Nariko couldn't help it, Shinku just hummed. She roped me and Fu in, the Uchiha added, slightly ashamed. She did bring good arguments though. Why weren't your parents there? They didn't know I was in the hospital, Shinku replied calmly. It's not that difficult. But why? Suzuki pressed on. Let's say the hospital calls the Harano household, to tell them their son is in the hospital, he states plainly. My parents stop working at 10 in the night, they come back home at 10:30, and wake up at 4 in the morning before leaving once more, with my father waking up sometimes at 3 o'clock depending on the amount of orders. Slowly, Shinku poured the water in the glasses. So the hospital phones at noon, which is the lunch hour. They phone at dinner time too, and then they phone in the morning at 7, but there's no one in the house at those times, he smiled bitterly. So, as you can see, my parents couldn't know. They thought I simply was out doing a mission when I didn't reply to one of their messages on the table, and thus there's nothing else to add. Awkwardly, Suzuki shifted on his feet. Indeed, Shinku replied calmly. I appreciate the sentiment, he stated, with his voice barely a murmur, but it was unneeded and uncalled for. You're part of team, Suzuki retorted. You showed it by saving the dobe, and now that she accepts that, you really have no idea, right? No idea on what? Shinku asked, raising his right eyebrow. Nariko has a very simple way of reasoning, you're either her friend or you aren't. There isn't a, I know that guy, or, I'm friendly with him but I don't consider him a friend, thing. Either you are her friend or you aren't. And by friend I mean that if she had to take a kunao for you, or pluck her eyes out to get you out of a bind, she would. Suzuki stressed out. That's what I'm talking about. If, let's say, I went on a rampage and burned down Konoha, killing hundreds, she would stop me, tie me up, and then make sure I got the lightest possible sentence or even the full pardon, before repeatedly trying to get out the reason I did it. Then she'd try to make me change. That's what I'm talking about. Suzuki grabbed the glass offered and drank it. So she thought I was abused at home and decided to investigate the matter. No, she actually thought we needed to work on your meek and shy attitude, and then when she realized your parents hadn't even come to visit you once in 2 days she became incensed over it. Let's just say, I might have added fuel to the fire by suggesting a possible reason. Really, Shinku deadpanned. Abused of all things, really. I spent most of my childhood reading police reports, Suzuki retorted. I mean, the skinny look and the meekness all pointed to that. When you started to hesitate on bringing us here, you just worsened the situation. There was the off chance they were at home, Shinku muttered. I don't know why I thought that I should know better than to think it, but... Why? This time, it was Suzuki's turn to be perplexed about something, which was a refreshing change, for once. Because I didn't tell them who I was in the team with, he acquiesced. I just told them the number of the team, and nothing more. Why not? Because then I would have to admit I was the dead last of the class to them, he chuckled grimly. The only thing I didn't want to be and ended up being, shaking his head, he gripped on the sides of the table. I don't envy you, or Nariko, for what you are or what you can do. I don't care if tomorrow you'll tell me you can shoot explosive tags out of your eyes or Nariko starts going faster than the light, but at least, I want my normal, average life. I want my Chiryunin flak jacket, and I want my boring desk job somewhere in the middle of the Hokage Tower or in the library. There are people who are born to become legends, and then there are the guys like me, who are born to be average, to be the thousands of thousands. He sighed. I'm not special, and I'm fine like that. I don't have a tragic past or a secret skill, so, please, next time Nariko puts her head in the gutter, take it out. Suzuki breathed in deeply once, before nodding. Yeah, I suppose I should have done that, rather than give in to her insistence. Best we go and stop them then. I don't know what they'd do if left unattended for too long. Shinku chuckled. Probably burn down the house. Then he paled. They wouldn't. I hope not, Suzuki snorted as they hurried out of the kitchen. They didn't have to go far. The two girls hadn't gone further than a single room ahead, and they were holding in their hands. Oh no, Shinku turned white as a bone. No, not that. The photo album. Look. How cute. Fu giggled. He's pouting, and here he's playing with the rubber ball, coochie coochie coo. Shinku shuddered, his face turning red as Nariko giggled next. Shin-chan was so adorable when young. Look at him. Just, look. Here he's got a spoon in his mouth, look at how chubby he was, why couldn't he keep those puffy cheeks? I'm going to die now, Shinku stated plainly. Suzuki snorted. Welcome to the club, he pointed at Nariko, asked my mother about my own photo album after her mother showed me hers. He shuddered. I'll bring you hers one day, what's fair is fair after all. Nariko's ears perked up, and she slammed the photo album to a close sharply. Oh, well, we were just goofing around. She sniffed the air. Oh. I can smell cake. Yes, Shinku drawled out. You don't get any, however, he added calmly, unless you put that thing back where it belongs. Ashamed, Nariko quickly did so. So. She clapped her hands. Any table games we can play while waiting? I should have a deck of cards somewhere, Shinku replied. There was a knock at the door after half an hour, which Shinku ended up getting because he lost the poker hand like everyone else, since Nariko kept on winning at the first hand. He understood, being lucky and cheating but always having the royal flush. That was borderline impossible. He opened the door to stare blearily at his sensei's smiling face. Hi. He waved his hand. I heard there's cake. Next to him was a woman wearing a long black suit with another flak jacket, albeit of a darker color than Kakashi's. She's my observer, he added then, she'd like some cake too. Hey Take-san, this is improper behavior. It's, alright, Shinku said, letting them both in and closing the door behind them. Kakashi nii. Nariko exclaimed, gazing up as the jounin entered the now starting to get small for Shinku's tastes living room. What are you doing here? I wanted some cake, Kakashi shrugged. And I wanted to tell you we have a mission tomorrow. A beautiful D-rank joint mission with a man known as Mato Guy, he smiled brightly. One which you could do with your eyes closed and without any need of my superior teaching skills, but which I will unfortunately have to participate in. Who's the woman? Nariko asked suddenly, narrowing her eyes towards the purple-haired kunoichi next to Kakashi. You finally found a girlfriend who isn't put off by your porn reading. I am Uzuki Yojeo, the woman said crisply, presenting herself. I will be Heitake-san's observer and supporting teacher, as per the Hokage's orders. Aren't you glad? Kakashi smiled, our team is growing up. We have Fuchan and now even Uchiha Katana's blade came an inch away from Kakashi's neck. Heitake-san, please refer to me with a proper name. I am Yojeo-sensei to the students and Uzuki-san to you. Ma, of course, Kakashi replied, slowly pushing the blade away from his neck with his 2 fingers. The katana disappeared in a flash back into its sheath on the back of the woman, who then politely turned to gaze at Shinku. Do you need a hand with bringing the plates over, Harano-kun? Shinku blinked. No, I've got everything handled. He moved towards the kitchen, getting down on one knee to check the cake in the oven. If someone had told him he'd have as guests 2 jounin, the 2 stars of the class and a foreign kunoichi who also was a jinhiriki, he'd have run away from the clearly mad person. Furthermore, his teammates actually worried about him. In a wacky way of course, but they did worry. Still a few minutes, he muttered, before opening the oven to pluck holes in the cake. It still had a little to go. He closed the oven and returned in the living room. The D rank is actually out of Konoha? Really? Naruko groaned. Why? D ranks are never out of Konoha. No, they are generally not out of Konoha, but this is a high-pay D rank, which requires 2 teams of shinobi, Kakashi hummed. Think about what you'll be spending the money on. How much? Suzuki retorted. We are a 6-man team, by the look of things. Suzuki looked around. If your friend's team is in there too, then we're a 10-man unit. What is there that needs 3 jounin and 7 genin? Construction work. Kakashi was actually clapping his hands. It made everyone uncomfortable. Simply construction work with the most sparkling bright green individual ever to exist, who will challenge you hour after hour to stupid senseless duels on just about anything you can imagine, Kakashi then growled, which actually eased everyone. The mission Heitake-san refuses to explain more keenly, Yojeo said then, is a mere delivery of extra construction materials that the Land of Waves paid for in advance and could not transport. The sealing scrolls have already been prepared, and we will depart tomorrow. Shinku would have liked to point out that he hadn't been in Konoha for a full day yet, barring being in a coma or in the hospital. He would have, if Naruko hadn't done so first. Hey. What about Shin-chan and Yuki-chan? Don't they get some downtime too? It is unfortunate, Yojeo acquiesced, which is why I hope they will enjoy today to its fullest. Furthermore, we aren't just us, Kakashi brightly added. No, that would still be fine if a bit of overkill. There's yet one more team. One who was originally sent there to protect the place from bandit attacks. His eye turned murderous. It will be 4 jounin and 10 genin, 4 jounin of which 2 are exambu and 10 genin of which 2 are jinhiriki. It will be complete, utter, total waste of shinobi forces in a single area, as if it were a powder keg ready to explode. And Kakashi clapped his hands. Nothing of strange is supposed to happen at all. Sensei just loves to punish me like this, right? Kakashi chuckled, scaring everyone else around him. He did appear to have snapped. He has a great sense of humor, doesn't he? So, we're going on an outright cakewalk mission. Suzuki deadpanned. Yes, Kakashi exhaled finally. One where I would simply sleep from morning until night, but where I won't because I'll be under scrutiny, meaning I will have to do something, meaning I will have to work at the construction, meaning I'll just cry a bit more. Kakashi hung his head. When's the cake coming? Kakashi nii, Naruko said softly, bringing a hand up to tap gently on the back of his right hand. Her eyes sparkled lightly in understanding as she gazed at him, before saying abruptly. You deserved to have your porn burned and buried. She smiled brightly, even cheerfully, as if nothing was wrong, which is why I told my mom where you hid your stash. Kakashi emitted froth from his mouth and fell face first on the table with a loud thunk. Yojeo turned her head sharply towards Shinku, before stating plainly. I think the cake is ready to be served. Shinku warily nodded. Yes, I think so too. Naruko just flashed him a smile, an innocent little smile that simply told him that, no matter the circumstances, he was not to have any porn in his house ever. Because it would be used as a hostage of war, and executed depending on circumstances. Still, the D-ranks were naturally easy, with a maximum pay of 50,000 ryos. They were going as a 3 Jounin and 7 Genin team. The pay would be of 5,000 ryos each. With 5,000 ryos, he could. Really, was that high pay? How was he even going to reimburse the cost of his lost equipment, if that was the payout? Thankfully, the hospital had given him back everything he had on him at the moment of entering. Meaning? Yes. He now had a Jounin rank flak jacket staying comfortably in a plastic bag in the corner of his kitchen. There was no way he would separate from that life-savior of his, busted or not, in shreds or not, it was his, and he was going to wear that jacket no matter what, even on a D rank. He had a bad feeling after all. Chapter 29, Everything starts going down eventually. YOSH. 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 Shinku had been sleepy. He had been. The extreme screaming of a man wearing a green spandex suit, however, had woken him up completely in the span of a few minutes. For self-defense purposes, he had actually taken a few steps back to hide behind Suzuki's body. The green was blinding, when mixed with the shining sun up in the sky. They were standing at the gates of Konoha, him, Suzuki and Nariko. Uzuki-sensei and Fusan had both gone to catch a tardy sensei. His mind actually placed the air marks of its own, and he hid a bit more to avoid eye contact with the strange green things. Yosh. Sensei. This must be your hip rival's team. A bushy-browed boy wearing another green spandex suit screamed, before the kunoichi of their team groaned. Lee. Stop yelling. What first impression are you going to make if you talk like that? The other boy, Hayaga, judging by the eyes, grimaced and looked sideways, his arms crossed in front of his chest. There was a moment of silence, just a heartbeat, before Shinku found himself stared at. Why do you have a flak jacket on? It was the girl who asked the question first. She had her hair tied in buns and was wearing a pink dress with navy blue shorts. Safety, he replied curtly, staying behind Suzuki, who appeared amused. We told him it was going to be all right. Suzuki rolled his eyes. He actually refused to leave without it on. That just makes you a bigger target, Shinchan, Nariko mumbled, but no, he had to grow a spine on something like this. We're letting him keep it if it helps him, why not? I'm not taking it off, Shinku grumbled. You get your own jacket. Nariko sputtered. I don't want yours. It's half broken anyway. I saw you trying it on, Suzuki snorted, really, dub. That was just because it looked kind of cool. It isn't against regulations. The Hayaga asked his sensei, who smiled brightly. Of course not. Shinobi of the past wore armor to protect themselves. If he can withstand its weight and not slow down with it, he can carry it. I'm proud to see that the fires of youth burn brightly in another student, who wishes to challenge himself with such a burden. YOSH. Sensei. We should present ourselves. Lee. You're right. Flashing another blinding smile, Shinku was starting to believe it was some sort of technique. The man went first. I am Konoha's mighty green beast Mato guy, YOSH. YOSH. I am Rock Lee. Tenten dropped her head beneath her shoulders. I'm Tenten, unfortunately, I'm in the team with these two. My name is Niji, the Hayaga said crisply. You already understood my surname if you looked at me in the eyes. Nariko gave the boy a dirty look, before huffing and putting her chest up. You already know my name and surname if you walk along the streets for more than a minute, she said with a shrill voice, but I'll do you a favor and present myself. I am the awesome kunoichi Nariko Uzumaki, future Hokage. Suzuki slammed a fist against the girl's head. And dobe extraordinaire, he added calmly. I think that actually hurt her, Shinku muttered. Sorry, Suzuki added hastily. It's alright, Nariko rubbed her head gently, before gazing back at Niji with something akin to, I don't like you, and I am going to make your life hell as soon as possible. I am Suzuki Uchiha, Suzuki said, I'm in charge of keeping the level of dobeness to a minimum. There was a heartbeat of silence. I'm Shinku, Shinku said then lamely. There was another awkward moment of quiet. Where's my hip and cool rival? Guy asked to defuse the awkwardness, looking around vividly. He's late, Naruko pouted. So we sent Yojo-sensei and Fu-chan to get him. Tenten frowned. You're a 6-man team. Yep. Naruko smiled. We're awesome like that. Or maybe you just need more babysitters, Niji replied curtly. OHI. You want to start something, Naruko snarled, waving her fist in front of her. I can totally start something if you want me to. Yosh. Mato Guy exclaimed, enough with this uncool attitude. You are all shinobi of Konoha. Be friendly. Burn with the fires of youth. Then he flashed a smile as a sunset formed behind him. Guy-sensei. Rock Lee had tears in his eyes. That was awesome. Rock Lee. Guy-sensei. Then the two hugged, and Shinku aptly brought his hands to his ears to kill out the sound of spandex rubbing against spandex. Note to self, Sasuke stated plainly. Never activate Sharingan with those near. Never. Ever. Ever. Yuki-chan, Naruko whined. Hit me, please, I want to forget. Can I have a fist too? Shinku muttered in disbelief, or maybe some bleach. Sasuke snorted, and shook his head. 5 minutes later, Kakashi appeared with a bleak look and ruffled hair as if he had just woken up. YOSH. My hip and cool rival. You said, something. Kakashi snapped back, before taking out his Ika-Ika. Students, onwards to the land of waves, last team to arrive sets camp. YOSH. Such is my rival's fire of youth. Then this is a challenge. Come, my genin. We shall arrive first. Shinku winced at the sheer noise, before Rock Lee retorted. YOSH. Sensei. And with that, the two began to run forward without waiting an instant. Fu and Yojo blearily looked at the dust clouds settle over at the horizon as the two were already long gone. Now we can have our own trip in peace, Kakashi muttered. Tenten looked at Kakashi with awe. Niji actually exhaled in relief. Onwards now. Kakashi cheerfully said, towards our cakewalk easy-peasy mission of boring delivery. Then he began to walk at the slowest pace conceivable for a jounin. Hey take-san, Yojo remarked dryly, stop acting like a child. Kakashi sulkily took the front of the formation, while Yojo took the rear. Naruko stood just behind Kakashi with Tenten, while Sasuke and Niji were side by side in the middle and Shinku was just next to Fu. They had a leisurely pace, albeit quite faster than the snail-walking Kakashi had attempted to use. The peace and quiet during the travel lasted for approximately less than an hour, before Fu began to talk. It's exciting, isn't it? She said brightly, turning to look at Shinku. We're going out on a mission, all of us. It isn't actually a picnic, Sasuke remarked from ahead, we are on a D-rank mission. Indeed, Yojo acquiesced. Why is all of this manpower needed to deliver materials? How much do we need to guard the scroll anyway? A single couriernin could have done the delivery, Tenten stated. We are also to help protect the bridge until it is built, Yojo affirmed. As well as cooperate in the construction effort. Glorified builders, Sasuke muttered darkly, and that's because our sensei is incapable of teaching. You said something? Kakashi asked, his single eye boring a hole into Sasuke's own gaze. The boy actually looked sideways after a while. Thought so, and then he returned to his book. Still, Fu exclaimed, before gripping onto Shinku's arm, it's exciting, seeing new places. Shinku warily smiled. He rather preferred keeping to the good and old places that while boring, at least were safe. I have a question for you, Niji said suddenly, turning his head towards Shinku. Do you think wearing a flak jacket will make you stronger? As the dead last of the class, what you wear is inconsequential to your ability. It is your destiny to fail after all. Niji. Tenten exclaimed, that's rude. Naruko growled slightly, OHI, you picking a fight with Shin-chan? He's going to kick your butt all the way to Konoha, you know. The dead last. Niji chuckled. It is a nice joke, Namikaze-san. I wouldn't think so lowly of him if I were you, Sasuke retorted calmly. You might be surprised. I will be surprised if this mission will end without accidents. Accidents the dead last will cause. Nariko stopped walking. Suzuki's eyes widened for a fraction, before the girl's hand went to clutch at Niji's shirt while showing her teeth. You apologize to Shinchan now, she growled. Nariko, stand down, Kakashi said crisply. Nariko, it's all right, Shinku exclaimed. Really, it's fine, he shrugged. He isn't wrong. Bullshit. Nariko snapped back. You're lucky, Hyuga, she hissed then, letting go of Niji. But I'm sparring with you once we get there, and I'll take that stick you have up your ass and beat you with it so much you'll go crying back to your mother by the time I'll be done with you. Then she spat to the side and began to furiously march forward. Niji, really? Tenten grumbled, before turning to gaze at Shinku. She bowed lightly. I'm sorry for him. There's no need, Shinku waved a hand in dismissal. He didn't say anything that wasn't true. It didn't matter if it hurt or not, it was the truth. He was the dead last of his class. Even if he had, by a string of lucky events, saved his teammates, in the end he wasn't hero material. He was fine with it. That's what troubling with you, Suzuki grumbled, grabbing a hold of Shinku and starting to walk further ahead. Then you wonder why Nariko think you're abused, he whispered hastily as they moved forth breaking formation to reach Nariko. Have some self-esteem. But. No buts, Suzuki quipped back. I understand not being arrogant about your achievements, but there's nothing bad with taking pride in what you did. They were now leaving behind the group as Kakashi hadn't even increased his pace but Yojao and Fu instead had. Nariko had stopped to catch her breath a few meters ahead, and once she saw the two of them arrive, she sniffled. Shinku had to hold on to his disbelief, because the next thing he knew, Nariko flung a punch at his stomach. Baka Shinku. Ga. Ohi. Suzuki exclaimed, pipe down. You can't let people walk over you like that. Nariko yelled, you need to stand your ground, you baka. Then she turned to Suzuki. You're the team, and he's the baka. Now we've got the insults down, Nariko nodded to herself, and then began to fuss over Shinku who was kneeling on the ground holding his stomach. Hey. I didn't hurt you that much, right? I didn't really mean it, you know? It's just, arg. It makes me mad when people don't defend themselves. Shinku swallowed his nervousness as he hastily smiled and slowly wobbled back on his feet. It's all right, he acquiesced. I didn't feel a thing thanks to the flak jacket, he made a strained smile. Then why did you double over? Nariko pressed on. Nothing important, he shrugged. Let's just get moving or we won't reach the land of waves ever. Indeed, Yojao said sternly, before moving closer and dusting off the sides of Shinku's flak jacket holding an extremely serious face as she did that, before evening the shoulder pads to boot. And remember, armor is an important piece of equipment that must be thoroughly checked for imperfections. Understood, Uzuki-sensei, Shinku replied. Good, have a chocolate chip. The moment the chocolate chip ended up in his hands, 3 pairs of eyes, albeit Suzuki will forever refuse to admit it, looked at the delicacy. Shinku felt surrounded by sharks. Exhaling, he swallowed the chip before taking out the chocolate bar, the melted one still in his pocket, still bringing him luck. The chocolate party was over in the next 5 minutes. Then, they proceeded at a steady pace towards their destination. The land of waves smelled of rotten fishes and salt. The acrid and pungent smell reached Shinku's nostrils for the first time, making him wince and nearly gag. An angler's boat carried them over quickly, bringing them directly at the piers overlooking a giant bridge where a Kirigakure shinobi stood in wait with a frown on his face. Konoha sent another batch of kittens and puppies, the man drawled out. His face covered by a white bandage, and a giant sword strapped to his back, his spiky black hair dully moved due to the breeze. Hello there, Kakashi said cheerfully. We weren't told about a Kirigakure team in the area. We were paid to make sure the bridge was built, the man shrugged. They must have paid quite the hefty price, for one of the swordsmen of the mist to be here. 1. The man chuckled raucously. You mean 4? Kakashi just hummed. Do you know where the Konoha team here is, Zabuza-san? Depends, he replied thoughtfully. What is your mission about, Konoha-nin? Only to ensure the bridge is built, I assure you, Kakashi kept up his carefree tone, even though the silence around the two shinobi was dreadful. I would throw that piece of chocolate away, Shinku. I'm inclined to agree. Someone has to be bringing misfortune. Then we won't have a problem, Zabuza shrugged. Welcome to Wave, where the food tastes like rotten fish, the sake tastes like rotten fish, and the only thing that doesn't taste like rotten fish is rotten fish covered in enough salt to make it taste like salt. Then the Kirigakure Jounin turned and left without a worry. Kakashi smiled. Where is Gai-san? Yojao asked then wearily. Wasn't he supposed to be already here? He must be challenging himself by trying to run across the water's surface, without using chakra, Kakashi remarked. He'll probably drown, hopefully. Kakashi then sighed in relief. A man can dream. They then reached the village near the bridge itself, and Shinku carefully brought a hand to his kunao pouch. It was run down, in a word. There were beggars, people eyeing from the dirty alleyways with gleaming eyes their group, and so much grime and filth around the streets that he felt as if he had mistakenly ended up in the night district of Odafukugai during the day. Not that he had ever been in Odafukugai. Not that he would ever go there to begin with. Tajuna-san's house. Kakashi hummed, walking boringly through yet another street, before stopping short of a shop. Oh. In that moment, a Konohagakure genin walked out. Shinku cocked his head to the side. The Konohagakure genin did the same. Shinku. Hibachi. So. It was Hibachi's team? Well, it wasn't bad then. Hibachi was, giving him a murderous look. He couldn't ask about that, because the next moment Kakashi took the cue. You're with Team 4, right? Hi, Hibachi replied. You're the relief team? Sensei said we were going to get some more materials for the bridge from a team. Indeed, Kakashi smiled. I gave the scrolls to Matogai. He was all too happy to be entrusted with the responsibility of carrying them. Putting his thumb up and smiling, Kakashi shrugged. Until he arrives. You did that on purpose, Yojao hissed suddenly. You knew he would be sidetracked. Who? Me. Kakashi mock pouted, I would never. He brought his hands to his chest. Why, you? Yojao gripped at the handle of her katana. Bring us to your sensei on the double, Kakashi said crisply, eyeing Hibachi. Understood. Why yes, sir. And with that, they headed off. I would have thrown the chocolate away already. If it turns badly, then I will. That much, Shinku promised to himself. He chuckled then. He had a promise to himself. Chapter 30, in the end, it doesn't really matter. The Jounin sensei of Team 4 was a plain-looking woman with brown hair and a stiff face. Her dull brown eyes moved from Kakashi to Yojao, before settling on both Naruko and Sasuke, completely gliding over Fu or Shinku, for what it mattered. She did give a hesitant smile towards Niji, but ignored Tenten wholeheartedly. The Sherry non-Kakashi? In this meager D-rank mission. The woman said with a nasal tone, how low have the mighty fallen? Kakashi grumbled, but said nothing. Tajuna's daughter smiled awkwardly, before saying, would anyone like some tea? We are sorry to intrude in such numbers, Yojao stiffly bowed. We'll camp outside. What's the situation here? Kakashi asked. Ahem, Yojao coughed. The genin shouldn't be within earshot of sensible information that might unnecessarily stress them. Right, the Jounin sensei of Team 4 smiled, amused at seeing Kakashi's face crumble after the remark into a distressed grimace. Hibachi? Can you bring the other teams to the bridge where Ami and Kota are? Hibachi nodded, a light grimace spreading on his face. Follow me then, as he turned to leave, Kakashi's voice exclaimed then. Shinku, you stay behind. Shinku's eyes widened briefly. Hey take-san, this. You're an observer Izuki-san, Kakashi stressed out. The final word is mine, he added, his eyes turning to the rest of the genin that had stopped. You lot, out. Kakashi nii. It's Kakashi-sensei, and now out. Sasuke warily gave Shinku one last look of worry, before pushing outside Naruko before she could make a scene. What's so special about the little Chiryunin here? The Jounin sensei of Team 4 remarked dryly. He's a genin, Kakashi dryly quipped. He just scavenged the armor off a corpse, humming lightly. Kakashi then took out his Ika book. He's already bloodied, so I'm pretty sure he can deal with whatever stress there is and, in case neither of us is present, he'll be able to relay the necessary information to the rest of his team. Shinku awkwardly gazed at the table. Was it that strange if he wore a flak jacket? Why would they give armor to the Jounin who didn't really need it with all the skills and techniques they had when genin actually risked their lives more? Very well, it's your student after all. The woman shrugged. The situation is as follows. She took a sip of tea that Tajuna's daughter gently offered, before continuing. The Geto Corporation is a commercial shipline society guided by, as the name implies, a man named Geto, who earns most of his money through both intimidation and underground work. They're organized crime, and they're not afraid of killing people. We are to protect Tajuna-san as he finishes building the bridge, and Wave paid for the D rank in question, and then Geto footed the bill for the rest of the operation to build the bridge. It's blood money, Tsunami said suddenly. It's the money of the land of waves that he acquired but he's helping us complete the bridge. Then the Kirigakure shinobi came. Geto paid them a lot, or he has a deal with Kirigakure or something. All I know is that from one day to another, I found myself staring in the eyes of 4 swordsmen of the mist and 3 Chiryunin. The woman shuddered. I didn't sign up for this crap, but they aren't interested in attacking us, so the mission still holds. They're actually safeguarding the bridge, then? Yojao asked. Are you sure they aren't planning something? No, the woman shook her head. I might not have a fancy eye or fancy umbu skills, but I know how to recognize explosive and the bridge is safe and solid. They even act cordially, the lot of them, which gives me the creeps. By the way, she shuddered. So what's the problem? Kakashi asked, flipping boringly another page from his Ika. If they want to pull a fast one, the Jounin replied, they'll pull it on the day the bridge is completed or nearly completed. I don't know why, but I've got a bad feeling about it. The bridge is Wave's only chance of surviving, Tsunami said with a pleading voice. If Geto destroys it, people already starve in the streets, so. What I understand is that Geto paid this mission, to have more Konoha shinobi here, right? Kakashi asked warily. Not only that, but he also paid for Kirigakure shinobi, quite a hefty sum, no doubt, and all for something that will no doubt bring him troubles. Kakashi's only eye narrowed. It doesn't make sense. It does actually, the Jounin sensei of Team 4 remarked. You just need to take the bridge from the village once it's completed. That's the true problem. We're basically completing the bridge for Geto, and there's nothing we can do about it. So what? Kakashi asked, should we do something like start a 4th shinobi war over a cesspool of a village? At his snappish tone, Tsunami clenched her hands firmly. That's true, the woman whispered, but, it's our village. Should we really just starve to death? You can always leave, Kakashi replied. Find your luck elsewhere, the man shrugged. Hey Take-san, Yojao hissed, but the man didn't listen. Kakashi exhaled. That's probably why Sensei sent all of this manpower here. In order to avoid a cheap shot at Team 4's expenses, we're to show our muscles and look all menacing. Kirigakure is renowned for doing this sort of tricks. He then looked at Tsunami with his only eye showing nothing but boredom. We aren't here to help you, as much as make sure Kiri doesn't try to kill the team we sent. Sorry, you're on your own. But please. There has to be something. It's all a matter of consequences, Kakashi replied. We fight Kirigakure shinobi on this mission, they'll fight our guys in another, and there won't be a platoon of Jounin to stop them from killing another team. Then things will escalate, badly. All to save what, 50, 60 starving people? It isn't worth it. Then he turned towards Shinku. So, if anyone asks, you're a Chiryunin, all right. Kakashi I smiled, act big and mean and growl a bit. That's against regulations, hey Take-san, Yojao remarked. No shinobi can claim a rank above his assigned. Now, I'm sure he'll enjoy it, Kakashi said then. How does it sound, Shinku-kun? You get to act like a Chiryunin for a few days. Tsunami slowly sat down on her chair, tears streaking down her face as she went by ignored. It was like watching a shipwreck, and knowing there was nothing you could do. Hey Take-san. Uzuki-san, don't worry. It's not like they'll ask. They'll see his armor and assume he is too young to be a jounin, so they'll think him a Chunin prodigy or something. Kakashi smiled. He'll get to play the part of the prodigy for once, won't he? Was the man mocking him? It's his funeral, the woman shrugged. Still, if everything goes well we'll be done with this by the end of the week. Shinku frowned. Were they all really ignoring the crying woman in the corner of the room? You can do nothing about it. Well then, Shinku-kun, Kakashi replied. Go and tell your teammates about your lucky promotion after your services in Takigakure. The silver-haired jounin smiled. It arrived through Toad summoning after all. Ah, all right, he turned to leave, shaking his head slightly. His tongue tasted like ashes as he walked once more through the dirty roads of Wave, heading towards the bridge. The shops were nearly empty, the children famished, and he was without sweets or anything else, for what it mattered. Mister, a small girl moved close to him, her hands extended filthy as they were. Do you have something? It broke his heart, because he had nothing. He awkwardly shook his head, before frowning as one of his hands went inside his pocket. 2 dry sticks of meat found their way in the girl's hands. Sorry, I don't have more, and then he began to walk once more. The kid couldn't have been older than 6 or 7 years. He was 13, and yet he had never begged for food in his entire life. It anguished him. Seeing such misery and yet nothing could be done about it. They were just going to exchange a misery for another soon enough, judging by the way the jounin had spoken. There is a way. I said, there is a way. What? Kill Gato. Are you out of your mind? Gato is a civilian. He's probably an old and fat guy sitting on a chair all day long signing documents. The only problems are the Kirigakure shinobi, but they won't be a problem if they're busy elsewhere. What do you mean? A smart shinobi chooses his battles. Straight fighting isn't our style, Shinku. We're survivors, we're the weak little rabbit. So, I should kill Gato? No, you shouldn't. Shinku actually frowned. You realize you aren't making any sense? He asked warily, as the road ahead of him was devoid of people. Oh no, I'm making perfect sense. You asked for a way, and I told you. This doesn't mean you have to do it. In fact, you don't have to do it and I will stop you from doing it, but it is a viable way. The jounin. They probably are smarter than you, and they already know. Hell, maybe the Hokage himself knows and wants to test Kakashi, or punish him. The inability to do anything, it is terrifying, and we know all about it, don't we? Shinku smiled. Can we please talk about something else? He whispered. Suit yourself. The bridge's entrance came into view then, as did the group of genin. Sasuke was actually glaring daggers at 2 other genin. One was Ami, so the other had to be Kota. Uchiha-sama, is it true you can use the Sharingan to see the future? Kota exclaimed with shining eyes. Sasuke-kun. I missed you. Ami tried to tackle Sasuke, only for the boy to dodge and let her end up slamming against Kota. Look where you're standing, stupid. Ami screamed towards Kota, Sasuke-kun. Sasuke had aptly flickered behind Naruko, who was instead warily giving glances at Hibachi. So, how's the little Shinku doing in your team? Hibachi said, did he finally manage to throw more than one shuriken at the time? Shinku frowned. He was within earshot, hadn't he seen him coming? Tenten and Niji both gazed at him, and since they were the 2 currently unoccupied, he neared them. He coughed, what's going on? Well, Tenten smiled awkwardly, apparently Kota over there is a big Uchiha fan. Shinku nodded, before he gazed at the workers of the bridge, all of which had stopped to watch the funny scenes unfold of cat and mouse between Ami, Kota, and Sasuke escaping. Where's Fu? He asked, looking around. That lasted until 2 hands covered his eyes, making him flail for a moment with a startled gasp. Guess who? Her voice chirped from behind him. Fu-san. Fu-chan sounds better, she pouted, before slinking her arms around his neck and pulling her chin to rest on his head. He could hear the buzzing of her wings on her back as she gazed and giggled at the scene of Sasuke running around like a duck chased by kids with sticks. "Ah, all right then," he replied wearily. Did she really have to stay that close? Wasn't she going to get tired eventually? Tenten gave him a strange look for a moment, before snorting. "What?" he asked, blinking. "Nothing, nothing," Tenten hummed, returning to watch Naruko keep a blank look over Hibachi's own praise of his actions. Shinku frowned. Weren't there supposed to be some swordsmen of the mist around here? Where are the Kiri shinobi? He mumbled, gazing around. That is a surprisingly smart question from the dead last, Niji replied gruffly, before his eyes suddenly pulsed as thick veins appeared around them. "Byakugan." "Up there," Niji said crisply, "they're all looking at us from the top of the bridge's pillars." Niji frowned then, "Wait, there. Hey kid," a voice sultrily whispered near the Hyuga's ears. Curiosity killed the cat. Then, as if talking of the devil showed its tail, they were all there. Zabuza, the one that had met them at the pier, and, well, one was a woman with red hair and 2 swords strapped to her back, her teeth displaying shark-like features. Another one had a dark-colored beard and hair, which he tied into a top knot. He wore a purple poncho, and the weapons he held on his back were a giant sword and a hammer, but the one that actually scared Shinku more was the lithe-looking last one. A mask covering his face, long dirty blonde hair falling down around it, a thin and long sword held leisurely on his shoulder. He looked like the weakest of the 4, and yet Shinku's entire body told him to run, hide, and never show himself again in front of the 4. The 3 others Kirigaku or shinobi actually paled in comparison, 2 being gruff-looking men with respectively 1 and 2 metal horns on their forehead protectors. The last one was a masked boy wearing a long kimono and with his hair flowing freely behind his back. He appeared calm, but with the mask on, it eerily resembled the Umbu masks, if not for the scary smooth porcelain and thin slits. "So, we've got what? 3 Jounin, 1 Chiryunin and Zabuza sneakered, a bunch of milk drinkers who aren't even worthy of being called shinobi." Amusingly, he turned then to look at Shinku. Shinku hated being the center of the attention. Been in a scuffle recently, Chiryunin brat. So what if his armor had nicks on it? Well, more than nicks actually, large gashes here and there. His throat felt parched as the air filled with tension. The smell of blood reached his nostrils thickly as he realized he was sweating terribly beneath his armor. It was like being in an oven, with all the eyes and stares of the Kirigaku or shinobi on him, centered on him, his body, his actions, his movements. They believed him a Chiryunin because of the jacket, but if he actually showed weakness, what if the Kiri shinobi killed them all? It could happen. Maybe Fu and Naruko might survive the first few minutes of battle to call for help, but they'd be annihilated. Their bodies would fall on the ground and their eyes would glass over, like the dead Jounin in the cave below Taki. They would die. He didn't want to die. Fu's arms tensed around his neck, as she stopped her flying to gently land behind him. "Ah, against a Jounin," he acquiesced, putting up an awkward smile. "Caught me a bit by surprise, ah. He nervously chuckled. The tension increased in the air, as Zabuza took a step forward. Shinku could hear the sound of hands moving at least, from the side that had both Sasuke and Naruko. "You killed him?" Zabuza asked with his voice still carefree. The tension, he supposed he could cut it with a kunai? His brain was screaming at him to leave, to turn around, to run. But if he did run, then he'd just be sliced in the back, wouldn't he? "Killed 4 of his men," he replied, his voice now a low growl. Had it always been like that, with that tone? Unfortunately, he took a step forward. "The Jounin caught me by surprise with a water technique. I'm more for making quick and clean kills than fighting it off on a one-on-one fight," he remarked dryly, shaking his head. "He did die in the end though," shrugging, Shinku mentally screamed. "Are you out of your mind? They're going to kill us. They'll call your bluff. They will. They will. I don't. Shut up." Zabuza gazed at him once more, appraising him. There was an instant of silence. It was so quiet that even the wind forgot to blow and the seagulls stopped shrieking up in the air. Even behind him, he could hear the breaths of the other genin still. "You know," Zabuza said in the end. It takes guts to lie to a Kiri shinobi. Zabuza's head moved closer to his face. Guts that I would really enjoy carving out of your body, if we weren't on strict orders not to start anything, but if you want to start something, we can always answer in kind. Shinku neared his own face to the swordsman of the mist, so much that they were practically staring into one another's eyes with but a hand of distance between them. Clenching his right fist, Shinku whispered then. Let's stay out of each other's hair, then. Very well, Zabuza shrugged, as the tension dropped down to nothing abruptly and Shinku realized he could finally breathe freely again. At least they give balls to the Konoha Chiryunin nowadays. Don't start talking of balls and sausages, Shinku rolled his eyes. Someone here likes to take measurements. He could hear Nariko stutter and sputter, but he couldn't help that remark. It hadn't come from his mouth to begin with. Well, it had. But, it hadn't been his mouth. Well, I'm sure we'll see much of each other soon, Zabuza chuckled. Stay sharp, kid. And with that the kunai that had been until that moment an inch away from Shinku's neck moved away. Shinku blinked. You too. With that, his right hand dropped the shuriken he had in his sleeve back in his pouch. When had he taken the shuriken? When had the kunai been near his neck? Had it been when Fu had moved backwards? He felt a pounding headache incoming, as the strongest of migraines seemed just inches away from erupting in his brain. He had talked to a swordsman of the mist. Well, his inner self had. Had he gone mad? Probably. Only a mad and idiotic imbecile would try to play it cool with a shinobi of the mist, with a swordsman of the mist, with a jounin of the mist, surrounded by a flock of. The moment the Kiri shinobi disappeared in a flicker of fog, Shinku realized he couldn't move his legs. He was rooted to the spot, completely and utterly scared stiff. Shin-chan. Nariko hazarded after a moment. He gave her a fear-filled look, before cracking out from his throat a single word. Help. Then he collapsed on the ground, out cold. Yes, it was the optimal solution, to sleep through it all. Check the description for the links to the author.